David here with Figboot on Pens, back again with another fountain pen review. Today I have for you a brand new release from Esterbrook. A couple of weeks ago I showed you their new JR model, but today I have a different new release, the Estie Maraschino. What I'm going to do today is go over the parts and features of the Estie Maraschino, talk about what I care for and what I don't care for about it. I'll show some measurements, size comparisons, and provide a writing sample. Thanks go out to Kenro Industries, the owners and distributors of the modern iteration of Esterbrook, for providing this pen on loan for review. The pen arrives in this standard Esterbrook box. It's kind of covered in a knit material and it flips open. Inside we have a standard international cartridge, and then we also have a polishing cloth, which is a nice thing to have. And then we have the pen. This is the Estie Maraschino. It's aptly named after the variety of cherry because the color is very much cherry-like. The Estie is offered in two sizes. There is the oversized, and then there is this standard version, which is a bit smaller. This model comes in two variants, one with a solid palladium clip, and then this one here where that solid palladium clip has been gold-plated. The pen is a classic cigar shape. The material kind of reminds me of a cherry jello salad. Those types of things were very popular when I was a kid. I'm still not quite sure why it was called a salad. There wasn't much salad about it, but they were all the rage for quite some time. This material has a fair amount of depth to it and a good variance of color. At some angles, the whiter accents are more visible. But I do care for this material a great deal. I think it looks pretty sharp. Let's take a look at the cap. The top of the cap is rounded. This transitions into the clip, which, as I mentioned previously, is solid palladium and in this model gold-plated. I find the clip to operate well. It's not too stiff and it's easy to use with materials of varying thickness. At the end of the clip, it is engraved with the Esterbrook logo filled with gold paint. And then there is a medium-sized step down to the barrel. The barrel is straight until about this point where it tapers down and the end of the pen comes to a rounded point. The cap twists off in a rotation and a half. Now, the cap actually contains something Esterbrook is calling a cushion cap, which is their version of a spring-loaded inner cap, like you find on the Platinum 3776 models, as well as many other pens. You can feel it when you go to cap this pen. You have to press slightly in order for the threads to engage. It's a system that works well for helping the nib from drying out. And I don't feel this spring is over-tensioned, so it's not like you have to exude a great deal of effort to cap the pen. I've tested other pens from other manufacturers utilizing similar mechanisms where the spring was a bit too strong, and you really had to be mindful and to, kind of press the cap in order to cap the pen. You still have to press on this pen, but it's just more of a slight press, which feels more natural and effortless. And you can kind of hear the spring in there as well. You can kind of hear the spring in here. Once you have navigated the cap, underneath we have a stainless steel number 6 Mv nib. The color of this nib matches the color of the trim, so on this model that color is gold. And here's a look at the plastic feed. This nib is available in extra fine, fine, medium, broad, 1.1 stub, as well as a special journal nib, which is a medium stub grind by Gina Salarino of Custom Nib Studio. Here's Gina at the DC show last year. I had her put on an architect grind on one of my Leonardos. She does some fantastic work and is quickly making a name for herself in the world of nibmeisters. She actually studied under one of the best, John Mottishaw, for a number of years. Now, this nib can actually be swapped out with other Mv nib units, which is a nice feature if you like changing up the nibs in your pen. Another thing that's nice about this version of the Estie is that it is designed to also accept the specially designed Esterbrook Mv Nib Adapter, MV standing for modern to vintage. Now, that adapter is sold separately and it allows this pen to accept the original Esterbrook Renew Point nibs. There are many folks out there who absolutely love the vintage Esterbrook nibs, and this pen provides an opportunity to use those vintage nibs in a modern pen, so you can get the best of both worlds. The section begins with a very slight flare and angles up just slightly until you reach a gold band, the rather short threads, and then another thicker gold band as it transitions into the barrel. I like the thickness of this section. At a little over 11 millimeters, that's a sweet spot for me, and it feels real comfortable. The Estie is long enough to use unposted. It does post, and it does post fairly securely. I say fairly because while it's on there with the angle of the taper at the end of the barrel, the cap is kind of making contact with the barrel at a single point as opposed to over more of an area. So if you apply a bit of pressure to the side of the cap, it doesn't really require much to kind of have it lose its grip. Now, while I've been using this pen, I haven't experienced any issues while posting it. It's just something to be aware of. This cap is rather light, so I don't feel it backweights the pen or throws off the balance. The transition from the barrel to the cap is also smooth, so it doesn't provide any discomfort if it rubs up against the inside of your hand. This is a pen which I've actually preferred to use posted. The Maraschino is a cartridge converter pen. It accepts standard international cartridges and a converter is provided. With the interior metal threads and the metal parts of the section, eyedropping this pen would not be recommended. The Esterbrook Estie Maraschino retails for $156 and is available at a wide number of retailers. I feel that that's a really fair valuation for what you receive with this pen. It's pretty solid. I really love this crushed red material. It's really pleasing to the eye. If I was to purchase one of these for myself, I would probably go for the palladium trim, but that's just a personal preference. I typically prefer silver trim over gold for most of my pens, but this gold matches well and really looks nice. It isn't as gaudy as sometimes gold can look on other pens. And as you'll see in the upcoming writing sample, the broad nib on this specific model that I have writes very well. I care for it a lot and feel that for around that $150 range, it's well worth checking out. Thanks again go out to Kinrow Industries for providing this pen on loan for review. Now it is time for some measurements, size comparisons, and a writing sample. Here we go with some size comparisons for the Esterbrook Estie Maraschino. In regard to some other pens, here it is with a Diplomat Arrow, and here it is with a Lamy 2000, and here it is with a Pilot 823. And in regard to some other pens, I have 3 pens here that I'm going to be reviewing in the very near future, and I don't believe that any of these 3 are released to the market yet, or they will be released very shortly if they haven't already. The first is a Narwhal Original Demonstrator. And then second up, we have a Benu Euphoria, and this one is called the Blue Wave, or I'm sorry, not Blue Wave, Big Wave. But you can see how this kind of looks like the foam of a big wave on the ocean. And this is kind of a larger pen for Benu, something interesting to take a look at. And then finally, something I just received yesterday, but I am very excited to take a closer look at, which is the Leonardo Fiore Grande. I just love the blue material on this particular pen. And this has a number 8 size nib on it. So I can't wait to take some pictures of this. I need to take some pictures of it before I ink it up so it looks all nice and neat. But I can't wait to play with this one. But this is what it looks like in comparison to the Esterbrook. In regard to uncapped comparisons, here it is with the Lamy 2000, the Pilot 823, and then finally the Diplomat Arrow. Here we go with the writing sample for the Esterbrook. Estie. I keep wanting to call this the Etsy, but it's the Estie. And this is the Maraschino. which is a word that I had to learn how to spell for this review. I didn't know how to spell maraschino, but now I do, since I've had to write it so many times and been thinking about it. So if you ever need to know how to spell maraschino, come and ask me. And the ink that I'm using here today is Monteverde. And this is Cherry Danish. I thought this was an appropriate ink to use with this pen. This is what the ink looks like. It's kind of a darker cherry red, and it is part of their Sweet Life series. This is what it looks like with Diamine Red Dragon. It's a little bit lighter than that. And this is what it looks like with another kind of darker red, which is the Three Oysters Eum, E-U-M. Not quite sure how to pronounce that. Maybe it's a Korean word, but Eum. And then this is what the bottle looks like. This whole Sweet Life series, there's a number of the inks in there that I really care for, so it's something worth checking out. And in regard to the rest of the writing sample, I do care for this broad nib on this pen, that you're not going to get a lot of line variation out of this. If you push it, see it starts to railroad just a little bit, but the ink flow on this is rather generous. And in regard to reverse writing, it's actually very pleasant. Lays down a nice extra fine line. And in regard to some fast writing, it has no issues in keeping up. So there we have the Esterbrook Estie Maraschino. I think for the price, it's something that's very reasonable and something very much worth checking out, and that I've enjoyed using it. And I'm not going to like having to send this one back. So who knows? One of these might need to find its way into my collection. So until next time, thanks for watching, and we'll talk to you later.